I take a night off, people get hurt.
You don't get what you want by day. You take it by force at night.
I think that this world, it needs men that are willing to make the hard call.
I'm just trying to make my city a better place.
Matt Murdock lives on a street level, bloody knuckled, he settles things with his hands. And so this idea of pushing that in a way that felt organic with the character and the world we wanted to create, it was just right.
Yeah, he settles things with his hands in back alleys, in dark back alleys. It's hard to do that in a PG world, so it actually just felt kind of quite right.
And for you, Charlie, what attracted you to playing Daredevil? I mean, there's a lot of history to this character that can be a little scary.
Obviously it's a huge challenge. I find the character so complex and interesting, and one of the ways I like to describe Matt Murdock is he's a bit like he's a walking contradiction. He's like us, like humans, like everyone we simultaneously can believe two completely opposite things. It feels bizarre, but that does seem to be part of the human experience. And so as the more complex these characters are, particularly if they're also superheroes, the more relatable they end up being. And I think if you're going to make a superhero television show, particularly a television show, because of course you're trying to engage an audience for much longer periods of time, 13 now 26 hours rather than 2 hours or 4 hours. It is important that those central characters are relatable. And so it's just on the one hand it was just a wonderful challenge, and then the other thing is I got to read the first two scripts of the first season, and I thought they were so sophisticated and interesting and sinister in all the right places, and unlike any superhero show that I previously seen or read.
In season 1, the build-up to the Kingpin was immense. He was always referred to as the employer for a couple of episodes before he was revealed, and that was brilliant. And as a fan of, I've watched the Kingpin as a villain because he's been in the Spider-Man comics before, and so he's always been this bad guy. But through the first season, his motivation seemed to do good for Hell's Kitchen, which made me root for him a little more than Daredevil, actually. But and that was the thing, that was the hook that kept me going for the first season throughout, to see what happens to him at the end. And is it the same thing that's going to happen in season 2? Is the build-up the same for the antagonist? What can you say about that?
I would just say that in a weird way is the way that version of Wilson Fisk kind of wanted to be introduced into the world, was he was a secret kind of criminal mastermind in the shadows. And some of the fun for us in introducing Elektra and introducing Frank this season, as you'll see tonight, is we tried to stay true to the characters and have them introduce themselves to the world of Daredevil as only they could and as only they would want to be introduced. So Frank's introduction is very different from Wilson Fisk. Wilson Fisk is kind of in the shadows until he has to not be. Frank comes in, as Doug said many times, Frank comes in, shoots you in the head, says goodbye, and keeps going. Like there's no conversation, there's no discussion.
What's different about this season, I think, is that Frank Castle isn't a villain. He's an anti-hero, and there is a big difference. And so really what he presents is it's not like, well, this is the new big bad for our second season of this show. It's more that he shows up, and initially Matt Murdock would like to pigeonhole him in the same way that he did Wilson Fisk and say, here's another bad guy, let's take care of him, let's bring him to justice. And what the world then says, or Hell's Kitchen then says is, well, hold on a second, he's kind of like you. And that is an immensely frightening thing for Matt Murdock, for Daredevil, to acknowledge, because one, if that is true, he has to accept two things. One, that he is responsible for the creation of someone like Frank Castle. And two, maybe even more scarily, he should then consider hanging up his Daredevil suit and never doing it ever again.
In another interview that I was watching on YouTube, you said that the suit goes through a lot of changes. And are there any Easter eggs to the old or the original black and yellow suit of Daredevil, or any fun that's thrown back to that we can expect? And if you can share one without spoiling anything.
That's like if you can get me pregnant by not getting me
with the Easter egg stuff, whether it's intentional or sometimes unintentional. I mean, my favorite one this season, I think, I'm pretty certain, was unintentional. It was kind of, it happened by design. It's fun because the whole crew, 150 people, all get behind it. Everyone, the rumors start circulating, people start looking on their phone trying to find the panel in the comics where it was. It's a really kind of it's something that I've never experienced.
There's one we can't talk about. Did you do one in episode 102? That wasn't an Easter egg, but you touching the hallway, and you said later you saw it.
Oh, but that was in the first season.
In the first season.
In the beginning of the hallways, in the beginning of the hallway sequence, the fight sequence at the end of episode 2 of season 1. I just had this idea that he would place his hand on the door, and through the vibrations he would get a sense, not just from hearing, but he'd get a sense of what exactly was behind that door. That's his way of almost seeing through the door. And then it was, as I was shooting the first season, every day I would get the subway in New York to the gym before I go to work. And so on the subway I would read one issue. And then later on in the series I found an issue where Daredevil arrives at a building and he puts his hand like that, just to kind of use his radar sense to get us there.
Since Daredevil came out last year, it's before the January announcement of Netflix coming to so many countries. What is your opinion on the fact that in most of these countries, Daredevil was consumed through piracy, through torrent downloads, and other means through the internet? What's your opinion on that?
It's certainly clear that piracy exists around the world, and our view is that Netflix is a very good antidote to piracy, and our goal is to provide a really high-quality, low-cost service around the world with a lot of original exclusive content. So now that we are a mostly global service, we're excited to continue launching new series and new seasons, and if there happen to be existing fan bases that we can now serve fully, then we'll have to do so.
Any information on the second season for Sense8? I know we're drifting from Daredevil, but that's another one of my favorite shows. So
they've just begun filming.
Yeah. Charlie, for you, first of all, how did you feel when you were when you knew that you were going to put on the iconic mask for Daredevil? I mean, what were your apprehensions, and what was the strain that you went through physically, of course, to pull off this character on screen?
Well, what was fun about the costume in this show was that I had an entire season to prepare for it, and what that meant literally was that by the time episode 13 came of the first season, myself and the 150 crew members who were on set every single day, everyone had been talking about it and wondering what it was going to look like and speculating and looking at the comics and thinking, will it be like this, will it be like that? And so the moment that I came on set for the first time wearing the suit, it felt like a tremendously heroic moment, because the whole crew were like so excited to see it. It was a very memorable day.
Will you ever feel that good again?
Yeah, never feel that good again. So and it was. I remember as the season was progressing, I remember Joe Quesada, who was heading up the team that was designing the costume. He would show me early drawings and illustrations, and so it was very, very exciting. And I have British actor friends who have played Marvel superheroes, but I never thought that I was going to get that opportunity. So in terms of the training, I've always wanted to play a character or to be involved in a production that requires me to really dig deep, if you like, or throw myself into a certain aspect of this character. Often I've been cast as characters that are very similar to myself, so there isn't so much homework, if you like, to do. Whereas this is not the case with this character. And of course, one of the aspects was the physical training and the gym work that needed to be done. Stephen DeKnight, who was the showrunner of the first season, he called me up and said, I got cast at the beginning of May and we started shooting at the beginning of June, something like that. And he's called me up and said, I need you to put on 20 pounds of muscle. And I didn't, I didn't own a gym membership. I'd never really been to the gym. And so, I very quickly discovered that I had to eat a lot of food. Go and work out, and I got into these things called protein shakes, which apparently are very common. They're now part of my daily life. That was kind of fun. And the martial art training, I spent time with Phil Silvera, our stunt coordinator, and Chris Brewster, my stunt double, and tried to learn as much of try and do as much of the fight sequences as I'm able to do. I really enjoy that aspect of the filmmaking process, so it's fun for me.
Also with the suit, a lot of superhero suits that we see in films are really uncomfortable, or have to be specially made for a certain action sequence. One of the one that we talk about a lot is in Batman Begins. There were actually places where Christian Bale could open a place and a lot of sweat would come out because it was that uncomfortable for him to wear it. Anything like that with the suit? Because season 1, like you said, was mostly just the t-shirt and cargo pants and boots, right? So is the suit
that costume was the most comfortable costume in the world. This one is surprisingly comfortable, and it has evolved a little bit as fans will watch, the audiences will watch the second season.
Through the second season,
there is an evolution of some degree, and it's woven into the storyline, so that it makes sense why this evolution does happen, which I always think is really cool. One of the things I think is the hardest aspect of superhero shows or films for audiences to grasp, to get their head around, is the actual suit aspect.
Yeah.
And one of the things that I thought this show did spectacularly well is they wove that into the storyline, so it was understandable and it made logical sense. And they've done the same thing this year with the evolution of the suit. But no, it's surprisingly comfortable. Initially it took 2 or 3 people to help me put it on. Now I can do it myself. I feel very grown up. I can dress myself. There's some modifications have made it as comfortable as almost as comfortable as the black suit.
Isn't going to be an easy one. The battle has begun, Matthew. And if you get in my way,